The day began quietly on the edges of the large film set, long before most of the crew arrived. The sun had only started rising, leaving a soft golden line across the sky. The desert location felt calm, almost sleepy, with a warm breeze brushing across the empty space. It was the kind of morning where everything seemed still, like time was waiting for something important to happen. Michael arrived first. He stepped out of the car gently, wearing simple clothes and a calm expression. Even though he was one of the most famous performers in the world, he carried himself with a peaceful kind of confidence. His presence did not need noise or attention. It simply existed, warm and quiet. He walked slowly across the set, greeting a few early crew members with soft smiles. Some of them were still half awake, holding warm cups of coffee, but when they saw him, they straightened up a little. Being near someone like him naturally made people more alert. He entered the backstage tent, designed so he could rehearse or rest privately. Inside, soft lights created a gentle glow, and fans hummed in the corners to keep the hot desert air moving. On one table lay a stack of storyboards showing the day's scenes, dramatic movements, close shots, and moments of intense connection. Michael picked them up one by one, studying each drawing carefully. His fingers traced the edges of the paper, and his eyes moved slowly, absorbing the director's vision. He didn't rush. He never rushed when it came to art. As he stood alone in the quiet of the tent, he gently practiced small parts of the choreography. His feet slid smoothly on the ground, almost silent. His hands made shapes in the air, following the rhythm in his mind. Even without music, his movements had a natural musicality. Watching him could feel like watching water flow. Everything he did looked effortless, yet everyone knew it took years of dedication to reach that level of grace. He paused, took a breath, and repeated a step, slightly improving the tilt of a shoulder or the angle of a wrist. It was small, but to him, small things mattered the most. Outside, the day grew brighter. More crew members arrived, carrying equipment and organizing cables. The set transformed from a quiet stretch of sand into a buzzing, creative environment. Ladders were placed, cameras were tested, lights were adjusted. People spoke in soft but quick voices, making sure everything worked perfectly. They all knew that today was important. A few minutes later, another wave of excitement ran through the crew. Naomi Campbell had arrived. The sound wasn't loud, but it was enough. Small gasps, whispers, and the glowing admiration that followed wherever she went. One of the most famous models in the world, she walked with a natural elegance that seemed to come from her very bones. She stepped out of her car with a relaxed smile, her posture tall and confident. Even covered from the desert sun with sunglasses, her presence felt bright and commanding. She greeted the director and a few stylists who rushed over to welcome her. Naomi laughed lightly at something a stylist said, her voice floating through the air, warm and friendly. The desert breeze played with her hair as she walked toward the backstage area, her long strides graceful yet powerful. People stepped aside politely, giving her space. Her energy filled the space not with noise but with a sense of professionalism and charm. When Naomi entered the backstage tent, Michael looked up from the storyboards. Their eyes met for the first time that day. They exchanged warm smiles, simple, respectful, sincere. There was no tension, no awkwardness. Instead, it felt like two artists recognizing each other. "Good morning," Naomi said with her calm, smooth voice. "Good morning," Michael replied softly. His voice was gentle, almost musical, as always. They stood together for a moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the backstage equipment. The air felt still, but in a pleasant way. They were both used to large crowds, bright lights, and loud environments, yet this peaceful moment felt grounding. It was a reminder that behind the fame, behind the cameras and expectations, They were simply people who loved creating something meaningful. The director stepped into the tent a few seconds later, carrying his own copy of the storyboard. He explained the opening scenes they would be rehearsing soon, pointing out the dramatic angles, the moments of silent emotion, and the dance-like movements that would bring the song to life. Naomi listened with full attention, nodding as she imagined her role in each moment. Michael asked a few thoughtful questions, trying to feel the emotional tone the director wanted. As they all worked through the details together, a sense of shared purpose grew in the tent. Michael and Naomi leaned gently over the same set of drawings, discussing how their movements might match the transitions between shots. Their ideas matched more naturally than anyone expected. They had different backgrounds, one from music and dance, the other from fashion and modeling, but their artistic instincts aligned beautifully. After a few minutes, the director left to check on the camera crew, leaving Michael and Naomi alone with the boards. Naomi placed her hands on her hips and let out a thoughtful breath. "This is going to be intense," she said with a playful smile. Michael smiled back, nodding. "But fun," he replied softly. There was something easy and respectful between them, even from the first conversation. They didn't need big introductions or dramatic exchanges. Their shared dedication to their craft created an instant connection. The stylist came into the tent a moment later, carrying wardrobe pieces for Naomi. Meanwhile, Michael moved to a small corner, practicing a few more precise steps. Naomi watched him briefly, admiring the control in his movements. Even tiny motions looked graceful, like he was painting shapes in the air. She didn't interrupt him. She simply watched for a moment with a quiet smile, thinking to herself how rare it was to work with someone whose artistic passion matched her own. As the morning continued, more people came and went from the tent, adjusting things, preparing clothes, checking equipment. But even with all the movement, the center of the room remained calm where Michael and Naomi stood. Their presence was like an anchor, keeping the space steady. A makeup artist gently powdered Naomi's face while she chatted lightly about the temperature, the upcoming shots, and the long day ahead. At the same time, Michael listened to a soft beat played from a small speaker, nodding his head and adjusting his rhythm. The quiet activity around them looked almost like a dance itself, everyone playing their part so the scene could shine later on. Soon, the assistant director called out that rehearsals would begin in a few minutes. The crew outside picked up their pace, checking lights one more time, testing microphones, cleaning the last bits of sand off equipment. The desert heat was beginning to rise, but no one seemed bothered. Excitement had taken over. Michael walked toward the entrance of the tent, ready to step into the open set. Naomi followed beside him, their steps in a natural rhythm, even though they hadn't practiced together yet. The world outside the tent looked bright and golden, almost glowing. It felt like a stage waiting for its story. As they reached the opening, they paused for a moment, standing shoulder to shoulder. They didn't say anything. No need. The moment held a quiet promise, a shared understanding that something special was about to begin. It wasn't the loud kind of excitement, not the chaotic kind. It was gentle, steady, powerful. It was the feeling that two talented people, who respected their art deeply, were about to create something memorable together. And with that calm awareness between them, they stepped out into the sunlit set, ready for the first rehearsal of a day that would become unforgettable. The rehearsal area was wide, open, and bright, with the desert sun shining across the set. Crew members stood around with clipboards, water bottles, and headsets, ready to begin. The camera operators were adjusting their equipment, checking angles, and reviewing focus marks. Everything seemed perfectly timed, like a quiet machine waiting for its switch to be flipped on. Michael walked slowly to his position, his eyes taking in every detail of the set. He had trained himself to notice small things. The way shadows fell, the space between him and the camera, the texture of the ground. These small things helped him deliver the best performance possible. He stood still for a moment, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. Even from a distance, he looked centered, like someone who carried calm inside him no matter how busy the world around him was. Naomi stepped forward into her marked spot as well. The breeze pushed lightly against her hair, and she brushed it away with an easy motion. She looked around with focused eyes, scanning the positioning of lights and noting how close the camera would be. Her experience in modeling made her naturally aware of how her body would appear on screen. Every slight turn of her shoulder or tilt of her chin was carefully measured in her mind, but none of it looked forced. She made it look effortless, as if she was born knowing these things. The director stood between them and clapped his hands once, calling everyone's attention. He explained that this rehearsal would be simple, just walking through the scene, understanding the timing, and feeling the rhythm of the moment. There was no pressure for perfection yet. He wanted them to get comfortable with each other's movements, to find the invisible connection that would bring the story to life. Michael nodded softly, listening with full concentration. He always gave directors his complete attention, respecting the vision they brought to the project. Naomi listened carefully as well, absorbing every detail. The director demonstrated a few slow motions, showing when they should step forward, when they should pause, and how their positions would shift with the camera's glide. When the rehearsal began, music played softly from a speaker. The beat started slow, like a heartbeat building up, filling the open space with a steady rhythm. Michael moved first. He stepped forward with measured grace, his body flowing gently into the music. Even though he wasn't dancing fully yet, his simple steps carried a natural elegance that made everyone watching fall silent. Naomi followed the beat, moving with her own style. Her movements were sharp yet fluid, confident yet controlled. She turned slightly, letting her expression soften to match the mood. Her eyes followed Michael with focus. Not as a performer trying to imitate him, but as an artist syncing with another artist's energy. The director watched closely, his arms lightly folded, a small smile forming on his face. Even in the first rehearsal, the connection between Michael and Naomi was clear. Without speaking, they mirrored the rhythm of each other's presence. Michael's movements were curved and smooth, while Naomi's were defined and strong. Together, they created a harmony that felt natural. As they practiced the first sequence, the crew around them moved quietly, trying not to disturb the flow. They were used to loud rehearsals on other sets, but something about these two created a softer environment. Everyone watched with focused eyes, knowing the moment was special even before the cameras rolled. Michael tried one movement again, refining his steps. He lifted an arm slowly, adjusting the angle until it felt just right. Naomi watched him and nodded, understanding the rhythm he was shaping. She adjusted her own pose to match the timing, and when they tried the sequence again, it flowed even better. After a few minutes, the director stepped closer, asking them to try a part where they would cross paths in slow motion. He explained that the scene should feel like two worlds coming near each other without touching, full of tension, yet full of balance. Naomi and Michael listened carefully, nodding. When the director moved back and called for the sequence to begin again, Michael stepped forward with a softness that felt dreamlike. Naomi did the same from her side, her steps steady and confident. As they crossed paths, their eyes met for a brief moment. And even though it was just rehearsal, it held an unspoken energy. Crew members watching felt that subtle spark, the kind that elevated ordinary movement into meaningful expression. They reached their ending marks, and the director slowly clapped once again, signaling a pause. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. "Let's try it again, even slower this time." Michael smiled gently, appreciating the calm praise. Naomi nodded with a small grin, brushing a bit of sand off her sleeve. She took her position again, rolling her shoulders back to loosen her muscles. The music started once more, and this time they began even slower. Michael's steps were lighter, almost silent. Naomi moved with a grace that seemed to float. Their timing matched perfectly, not because they were trying too hard, but because their artistic instincts naturally aligned. Watching them felt like watching two shapes glide across the same breeze. The director raised his hand, signaling another pause. Perfect. Now let's add a little attitude. Just a touch. Nothing strong, just a hint of expression. Michael and Naomi exchanged a short, playful glance. They understood exactly what he meant. Expression wasn't just about big gestures. It was about what they carried in their eyes, their stance, their rhythm. They started again, and this time their movements were the same, but carried a tiny spark of emotion, a quiet intensity, a soft pull, a subtle understanding. After several rounds of practice, they took a small break. Crew members rushed in with water bottles and towels. Naomi took a drink and laughed lightly about the temperature again. "This sun is trying to win," she joked. Michael chuckled softly, nodding. "It's strong," he said. His voice was gentle, but the small smile on his face showed that he was enjoying the day. During the break, the director reviewed the footage they had just captured during the rehearsal. Even without full effort or costume, the camera caught something magical. He returned to them with excited eyes. "You two look incredible together on screen," he said. "The rhythm is natural. The energy is balanced. This is going to be something unforgettable." Michael nodded quietly, appreciating the compliment but staying humble. Naomi smiled warmly, knowing the director meant every word. When the break ended, they returned to their positions. The crew prepared for a more detailed run-through. This time, the director wanted to test camera movements along with their choreography. The camera glided on a track, moving smoothly around them. As Michael and Naomi rehearsed again, the camera circled gently, capturing every angle. The sun, now brighter, created natural highlights on their silhouettes. Even the breeze seemed to move at the right moments, brushing softly against them and adding a natural motion to the scene. Michael leaned into one step with precise timing, and Naomi responded with her own controlled shift. Their synchronization continued to improve. Every practice made their connection clearer, their rhythm more steady, and their expression more meaningful. Crew members whispered quietly to each other between takes. "They move well together. There's something special happening. It already looks amazing." The rehearsal stretched on, but no one felt tired. The atmosphere was filled with excitement, not chaotic energy, but a calm, focused anticipation. Everyone sensed that something beautiful was being created right in front of them. Finally, after many successful run-throughs, the director raised his hand. "Great work. That's exactly what we need. Let's move to the next part soon." Michael exhaled gently, wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. Naomi stretched her neck and arms, preparing herself for the next section. Even though the rehearsal had been long, both of them looked energized, not drained. Working with someone who matched their passion made everything feel lighter. As they walked back toward the tent together, the breeze trailing behind them, there was a quiet sense of accomplishment in the air. They had only finished the first rehearsal, but it already felt like the beginning of something remarkable. The short break after rehearsal brought a softer calm across the set. Crew members moved around quietly, adjusting equipment and preparing for the next stage of the shoot. The desert heat continued to rise, but a light breeze made the atmosphere feel calmer than before. Even the sun seemed to shine a little more softly now, as if it understood that something meaningful was happening on this set. Michael stepped into the shaded backstage tent, taking a moment to rest. He gently wiped his forehead with a small towel and sat on a wooden chair placed near a fan. The cool air brushed against his face. And for the first time that morning, he allowed himself a small sigh of relaxation. He wasn't tired in a heavy way, but rehearsals always made him focus deeply, and moments of rest allowed him to reset his mind. Naomi entered the tent a few minutes later, smiling as she removed her sunglasses. Her steps were light and unhurried, the kind of walk someone takes when they feel comfortable in a space. She glanced around and spotted Michael sitting quietly with his towel. A warm smile crossed her face. "You handled that rehearsal so smoothly," she said jokingly as she approached. "I'm still trying to follow your timing." Michael looked up at her with a gentle smile. "You followed perfectly," he replied softly. "Your movements were strong and graceful." Naomi laughed lightly, touched by the compliment. She sat down on a chair across from him, placing a water bottle on her lap. The tent felt peaceful around them. The noise from the crew outside was soft and distant, creating a private little bubble where they could breathe without pressure. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply enjoyed the quietness. Michael leaned back in his chair, his eyes following the movement of the tent's fabric as the breeze pushed it gently. Naomi tapped her fingers lightly on her bottle, humming a little tune to herself. It was a calm and natural silence, not the awkward kind. In many ways, silence was easier for both of them than heavy conversation. They understood the value of peaceful moments. After a few seconds, Naomi looked at him again. "Are you always this calm before filming?" she asked, genuinely curious. Michael smiled shyly. "Mostly," he answered. "I try to stay focused. Noise can distract me, so I like quiet moments like this." Naomi nodded thoughtfully. "I get that. Before fashion shows, everyone rushes around, but I always try to find a quiet corner. It helps me prepare." They shared a small laugh, realizing they had more similarities than they expected. They came from different worlds, music and fashion, but the artistic lifestyle taught them similar lessons. A crew member walked in to inform them that the director needed a few more minutes to adjust camera placements. Naomi thanked him, and he left quickly. She stretched her arms above her head, loosening her shoulders from the earlier movements. "Filming days are always interesting," she said with a playful sigh. "You come thinking you'll be on camera the whole day, but half the time you're waiting for lights to be fixed." Michael chuckled softly. "True," he said, "but all the waiting is worth it for the final moment." His calm optimism made Naomi smile. She appreciated people who valued the art more than the routine. It made her feel understood, something she didn't always experience in her career. A makeup artist arrived next, carrying small brushes and powders. She approached Naomi first, gently touching up her face with quick, practiced motions. Naomi closed her eyes and stayed still, breathing slowly as the makeup artist worked. Michael watched quietly, appreciating how professional and composed she remained, even during simple touch-ups. When the makeup artist finished with Naomi, she turned to Michael. He sat upright, giving her a soft smile. She dabbed a little powder on his face to reduce the shine from the heat. Michael stayed perfectly still, blinking gently as she worked with soft, careful hands. While all this happened, the breeze outside picked up a little, making the tent's fabric flutter. The sound was soothing, like soft waves rolling on a beach. It added to the peacefulness of the moment. Once the makeup artist left, Naomi took a sip of water and turned her attention back to Michael. "You know," she began, "watching you rehearse earlier, it's clear how much you love your work." Michael lowered his eyes slightly, shy but appreciative. "Thank you," he said. "I just like giving everything I can to the moment." "It shows," she replied warmly. "Even the smallest moves look meaningful." Her words were sincere, not exaggerated. She wasn't trying to flatter him. She genuinely felt it. Michael appreciated that kind of honesty. He always valued authenticity, especially from someone he respected. For a few minutes, the two talked about art, how the camera captures emotions, how music creates mood, how body language can speak without words. It was a gentle, intellectual conversation, one artist to another. Neither needed to impress the other. They were just sharing thoughts. Naomi rested her elbow on the armrest, leaning slightly forward. "What's your favorite part of filming music videos?" she asked. Michael thought for a moment. "I think it's the storytelling," he answered. "Music is already emotional, but when you add visuals, it becomes like a world you can step into." Naomi smiled. "That's such a beautiful way to see it." "And you?" he asked politely. "What do you love about being on camera?" She took a slow breath. "I love the transformation," she replied. "You can step into a mood, a style, a scene. It's like becoming a part of a picture." Michael nodded slowly. "That's a perfect way to describe it." Their conversation drifted gently from topic to topic. The more they spoke, the more they understood each other's passions. There was no rush, no pressure, just two talented people sharing thoughts like old friends, even though the morning had been their first true interaction. A production assistant poked his head into the tent after a while. "We'll be ready in about 10 minutes, he announced. Naomi and Michael both nodded in acknowledgement. After he left, they stood up to stretch and prepare. Naomi shook out her arms and legs, staying loose for the next performance. Michael practiced a few small movements, making sure his body felt ready for the next sequence. As they prepared, Naomi glanced over at him with a playful smile. "You always practice quietly," she said, amused. Michael smiled back. "It helps me stay focused." "Well," Naomi replied with a teasing tone, "whatever you're doing, keep it up. It works." He laughed softly, a sound light enough to melt any tension in the air. The director returned to the tent, carrying a tablet with test shots from the rehearsal. "You two look amazing together," he said with bright enthusiasm. "The camera loves this connection between you." Naomi leaned in to see the footage. Michael stepped closer as well. Together, they watched themselves on the screen. The slow movements, the near-crossing paths, the gentle expressions. Even without full wardrobe or lighting, the scene already carried a strong emotional tone. "It looks really nice," Naomi said softly. Michael nodded. "It feels natural." The director looked at them with a satisfied smile. "This is the exact energy I wanted," he said. "Soft, balanced, expressive. Let's keep this feeling in the next part." Naomi and Michael exchanged calm nods. They were ready. Outside, the wind brushed across the sand, creating small, moving patterns on the ground. The crew finished their adjustments, setting up for a new scene. Voices called out instructions, and cameras rolled across their tracks. Everything was ready for the next stage of the shoot. Michael glanced at Naomi before stepping out of the tent. "Ready?" he asked. She smiled confidently. "Always." Together, they walked out into the golden light once again. The warmth of the sun wrapped around them as the crew positioned them for the next section. Their minds were clear, their energy was steady, and their connection felt deeper than before. The break had not only given them rest, it had given them understanding, and that understanding was about to make their next performance even more powerful. The moment the next part of the filming began, the entire atmosphere of the set seemed to shift. The calm energy that had filled the earlier rehearsal transformed into a focused intensity. Lights brightened, cameras glided smoothly into position, and a soft buzz spread through the crew as everyone prepared for a more serious round of shooting. It was as if the set had awakened fully, ready to capture something special. Michael stepped into his mark first. He looked calm, but his eyes carried a new spark, a quiet determination. He adjusted his posture with gentle movements, lifting his chin slightly and letting his shoulders fall into a relaxed but ready position. The way he stood showed how deeply he cared about the craft. Even stillness for him was a part of the performance. Naomi joined him moments later. She walked into the frame with a presence that didn't need effort. She simply belonged there. Her footsteps were steady, each one measured with confidence. She glanced at the lights, then at the camera, adjusting her stance naturally. Her expression softened as she found the right emotional tone for the next sequence. Even the crew members paused to admire how effortless she made it all look. The director moved into place, holding a handheld monitor. He gave them a warm smile, the kind that encouraged but also reminded them of the importance of the next scenes. "This part needs more emotion," he explained. "Not big gestures, just small expressions. The camera will be close, so every detail will matter." Michael nodded slowly, absorbing each word. Naomi listened with full attention, her eyes focused and thoughtful. She understood what the director meant. This wasn't about grand movements. It was about subtle energy, the kind that could be felt even in silence. The music began, soft at first, just a gentle beat that echoed across the desert space. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The rhythm itself created a mood, a warmth that wrapped around both of them like a soft scarf. Michael moved first, stepping into the choreography with controlled ease. His body flowed like water, seamless and graceful. Each motion traveled through him naturally, beginning from his center and spreading outward in soft, fluid lines. Even in slow movement, he carried a unique intensity. His expression matched the rhythm, serious, emotional, thoughtful. Naomi stepped into her sequence as well. Her movements were not like Michael's. They were sharper, more defined, with a style that came from years of modeling and physical storytelling. Yet in this scene, she softened those edges just enough to blend with his energy. She allowed her expression to change gently, her eyes holding a quiet strength. The contrast between them made the scene even more visually striking. As they moved in unison, the camera operator followed them smoothly, capturing every angle. The wind brushed across the set, adding soft motion to the scene, stirring Naomi's hair and creating a natural rhythm in the background. Even the shadows played their part, dancing lightly along the sand. The director raised his voice gently, giving small notes as they worked. "Slow that step just a little, Michael. Yes, that's perfect. Naomi, hold that pose for half a second longer. Wonderful." Each adjustment made the scene richer. Michael absorbed every instruction easily, repeating motions until they felt meaningful. Naomi adapted gracefully, shifting her movements with natural elegance. Their dedication impressed everyone watching. After several takes, the director asked for a version with slightly more intensity. Not dramatic, just more emotional depth. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, preparing himself. When he opened them, something subtle had changed. His expression carried more weight, more feeling. Not sadness, not joy, something in between, the kind of emotion that sits quietly in the heart. Naomi noticed it instantly. She matched him with her own subtle shift. Her eyes softened. Her steps became slower, more thoughtful. She allowed the moment to pull her inward, letting the mood guide her movements. The camera rolled again. This time their movements felt richer. They weren't just performing, they were communicating in ways that didn't require words. Michael's hand lifted softly, and Naomi's gaze followed. Naomi shifted slightly, and Michael adjusted in response. Their timing was perfect, not because they tried hard, but because they trusted each other's energy. Crew members exchanged looks, recognizing the magic of the moment. There was a sense that something important was happening, an unspoken harmony between two artists who respected each other deeply. After the take, the director let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. "Let's watch the playback." They gathered around the small screen. Michael stood with his hands gently folded, watching with focused eyes. Naomi leaned slightly forward, her expression thoughtful and curious. On the monitor, the footage looked stunning. The natural sunlight created golden highlights around them. Their movements synced perfectly. Their expressions matched the tone exactly. The scene felt alive, filled with gentle emotion. Naomi smiled softly. "It looks really nice." Michael nodded. "The mood feels right." The director beamed. "It's more than right," he said warmly. "It's powerful." After a few more takes, they moved to another part of the set. This time, the director wanted slightly faster movements, still elegant, still subtle, but with more rhythm. Michael stepped into position, rolling his shoulders back gently. Naomi shook out her hands, preparing for the quick transitions. The music played again, this time a bit stronger. The beat pulsed through the air, creating a fresh energy. Michael led with a sharper movement, still controlled but more dynamic. Naomi matched him effortlessly, her timing perfect. The camera circled them, capturing each shift in motion. Sand swirled around their feet as the wind picked up again, adding a natural texture to the scene. In every take, Michael brought something new, an extra angle, a slight shift, a more expressive turn. Naomi did the same, adjusting her posture, changing her focus, allowing her body to tell a story through small but powerful movements. Their connection deepened with every second. They didn't need to speak much during the shoot. Their communication happened through glances, timing, and instinct. When Naomi turned, Michael adjusted. When Michael lifted a hand, Naomi followed the rhythm. It felt like a quiet conversation happening through motion. Crew members continued to watch in admiration. "It's like they understand each other without talking," one whispered. "They were made to perform together," another added softly. The director walked over after another successful take. "You two are doing incredible work," he said proudly. "Let's take a short break, then move into the final shots." Michael wiped his forehead gently, smiling in his calm, humble way. Naomi stretched her arms and shook her shoulders loose again. During the short break, they shared a quiet moment under the shade. Naomi took a small sip of water and looked at him with a warm smile. "Your energy today is amazing," she said. "You make everything look easy." Michael smiled back gently. "You make it look easy too," he replied. "Your timing is perfect." The compliment made Naomi laugh lightly. "Maybe we're good at making each other better." Michael nodded softly. "Maybe we are." Their conversation was simple, but the respect in their voices was clear and genuine. When the final shots started, the energy was even stronger. The sun had begun its slow journey down, casting a soft golden glow across the entire set. The lighting created a magical atmosphere, almost like a natural spotlight surrounding them. Michael stepped into his mark with renewed focus. Naomi joined him just a moment later, and when the music began, both of them moved with a confidence that came from hours of connection, understanding, and shared passion for the craft. Every movement felt alive. Every shift felt meaningful. The camera captured it all, the dance of shadows, the soft breeze, the graceful motions between them. By the time the director called, "Cut!" for the final time, the crew broke into gentle applause. It wasn't loud or chaotic. It was respectful, appreciative, a quiet celebration of the artistry they had just witnessed. Michael and Naomi exchanged warm smiles, both filled with a sense of accomplishment. The day had been long, but they had created something exceptional together, something honest, expressive, and unforgettable. The final take of the day ended with a soft echo of applause that spread through the set like a warm breeze. It wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was the kind of applause that came from honest appreciation, from people who understood how special the moment had been. Michael stood still for a second, letting the sound wash over him. His chest rose and fell slowly with calm breaths. Naomi lowered her hands from her last pose and exhaled gently, a peaceful smile playing on her lips. They both felt the same thing, a quiet sense of accomplishment. The director approached them with his monitor still in hand, excitement glowing in his eyes. "That was perfect," he said, almost out of breath. "The timing, the expression, the movement, everything came together exactly how I imagined." Michael gave him a modest smile. "Thank you," he said softly. "It felt good." Naomi nodded in agreement. "It really did. The energy was right." The director motioned them closer. "Come see the footage." They walked toward the small screen together. Crew members moved respectfully around them, some packing equipment, others adjusting lights for the last time, while a few gathered behind the director to peek at the playback. On the monitor, the final scene played out. Michael and Naomi watched silently, their eyes fixed on the glowing screen. The soft desert light framed their movements beautifully. Their timing flowed like a calm wave, each of their motions complementing the other. Every subtle expression they had practiced earlier now appeared clearer, stronger, more meaningful. The breeze, the shadows, the natural glow, all of it added something magical to the shot. Naomi felt a warm sense of pride rise inside her. "It looks so beautiful," she whispered. Michael nodded slowly, his eyes studying every detail. "The feeling is there. It's gentle but strong." The director grinned, proud of what they had created. "This is going to be unforgettable." As the playback ended, the screen turned dark, and a comfortable silence settled among them. It wasn't the silence of uncertainty. It was the silence of satisfaction, the kind that followed a job done well. Crew members started giving small waves and soft congratulations. Some walked by saying, "Great job today," while others simply smiled at the two of them as they passed. You could feel respect in every gesture. Michael stepped away first, walking slowly toward the tent to cool down. Naomi followed after thanking a few people who complimented her performance. When she entered the tent, she found him sitting quietly on a chair taking a sip of water. His expression was peaceful, almost thoughtful, like someone replaying special moments in his mind. She sat down beside him, leaving a comfortable space between them. The tent was dimmer now, with the sun lowering outside. The fabric walls glowed softly with warm colors, and the breeze continued to brush gently through the room. "That was a long day," Naomi said, stretching her arms with a light sigh. Michael chuckled softly. "A long day," he agreed, "but a good one." Naomi smiled. "One of the best shoots I've done in a while." Michael looked over at her, surprised but pleased. "Really?" "Yes," she said warmly. "There was a calmness today, no rushing, no stress. Just good work, and the connection in the scenes felt natural." Michael lowered his eyes for a moment, shy but grateful. "You made it easy." Naomi laughed gently. "And you made it easier." They sat together quietly for a few seconds, letting the truth of their words settle. Both of them had worked with many people in their careers, but it was rare to find a partner whose energy matched so smoothly. There was something special about the way they understood each other's timing, the way their movements blended, and the way they respected each other's process. Outside the tent, the sound of the crew cleaning up continued. Equipment cases clicked shut, lights were packed away, and cables were rolled carefully. The day was ending, but the atmosphere remained warm. A stylist entered the tent, gathering wardrobe pieces and accessories. Naomi helped fold a few items, chatting lightly with the stylist about the day. Michael took off his performance jacket and handed it over with a quiet thank you. Everything felt peaceful now, like the final pages of a pleasant story. When the stylist left, Naomi turned back to Michael. "You know," she said, "I didn't know what to expect today, but you're different." Michael tilted his head slightly. "Different how?" he asked gently. "Calm," she replied with a soft smile. "Kind, focused. You make the space around you feel safe, Not many people have that. Her words were simple but sincere. She wasn't trying to flatter him. She was expressing something real. Michael gave a shy smile, looking down at his hands. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That means a lot." A short silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. It was a peaceful pause filled with mutual understanding, the kind that happens only between people who share respect for each other. Outside, the sun had dipped lower, turning the sky into soft shades of orange and pink. The heat of the day had melted into a gentle warmth. The director appeared at the tent's entrance, waving them over. "We're done for today. You two can head out whenever you're ready," he said. Michael stood up slowly, stretching his back. Naomi grabbed her water bottle and followed him out of the tent. The air outside felt cooler, fresher. Crew members waved their goodbyes as they walked by. Michael and Naomi walked side by side toward the parking area. Their steps matched naturally again, just like in the choreography. The golden light of the evening touched their silhouettes, giving the moment a quiet beauty. As they walked, Naomi glanced over at him. "I hope we get to work together again someday." Michael smiled softly, his eyes reflecting the warm sunset. "I'd like that," he said. They reached the point where their paths separated. Her car on one side, his car on the other. For a moment, they stood facing each other in the fading light. "Take care," she said warmly. "You too," Michael replied. They shared one last smile before turning toward their cars. Naomi opened her door and paused, glancing back once more as Michael waved gently before stepping inside his vehicle. There was nothing dramatic in the moment, just a simple, sincere goodbye filled with appreciation. As Naomi drove away, she looked at the sky filled with soft colors. She felt grateful for the day, for the experience, and for the calm connection she had found in her co-star. Michael drove off slowly as well, thinking quietly about the scenes they had created and the peaceful energy Naomi had brought into the project. The desert set grew quieter as cars left one by one. In the end, all that remained was the soft wind blowing across the sand and the memory of a day filled with hard work, gentle emotions, and two artists who made each other better. The footage they created would soon shine on screen, but the calm understanding they shared backstage would stay with them long after the cameras stopped rolling, a simple, beautiful reminder of what true collaboration feels like.